up those pledges. Also, there's a couple of slots left over for sponsorship of iftar. Please come forward and do so. Sallallahu Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وبه نستعين إنه خير ناصر ومعين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وخاتم النبيين وسيد المرسلين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman, Salamun alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, we'd like to continue looking at the story of Nabi Musa alayhi salam in the Quran. And what we've seen until now is that Nabi Musa alayhi salam is somebody that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us is a special person. He's somebody who was blessed at a young age. He's somebody who was eventually chosen to be the Prophet of Allah. He was somebody that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows great love to, as He tells us about in the Quran. Just as an example of the love that Nabi Musa alayhi salam is shown in the Quran, at one point he is told to go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and go on a spiritual retreat for 30 days. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, out of love of Nabi Musa alayhi salam, extends this retreat for another 10 days. So instead of going for 30 days, he goes for 40 days. 40 days of engaging in whispered conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we read about his status, and we knowing that the Quran is a book of guidance, then we say, okay, what is it that Nabi Musa alayhi salam did in his life to be rewarded in such a great way while he was alive? What are those things that he did that Allah tells us about so that we can do those same things ourselves? Until now we've seen a number of those characteristics. We saw that how just in a few ayat, so many lessons we learned about Nabi Musa alayhi salam and life lessons that we learned. For example, he was somebody who in the face of difficulties was always hopeful. He was somebody who, when hard times came up, he turned to God and he didn't lose hope. He was somebody who was always energetic. He was never lazy. He was somebody who was always looking to do more and more for the sake of God. He was somebody who held himself back from unnecessary mingling, but somebody who did his duty when appropriate. He was somebody who didn't seek rewards from other people, but he sought rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All these are lessons that we learn throughout the nights as we're going through the ayat. He was somebody who wanted to get married at a young age. And he was somebody who wanted to be in the company of a prophet. And he was somebody who didn't mind working, because working he saw as a means of getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All these were lessons that we learned from the story of Nabi Musa alayhi salam. Tonight we'd like to go to a different surah, Surah Al-Kahf, which is surah number 18, starting from verse number 60. And we'd like to see what Nabi Musa alayhi salam is doing in this surah, and see what other new characteristic, what other life lesson we can learn about Nabi Musa alayhi salam that we can take and apply to our lives, inshallah. Nabi Musa alayhi salam, we're told, is walking. Okay, where is he walking to? What is he walking for? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, verse number 60, وَإِذْ قَالَ مُوسَى لِفَتَاهُ. Please say salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. وَإِذْ قَالَ مُوسَى لِفَتَاهُ لَا أَبْرَحُ حَتَّى أَبْلُغَ مَجْمَعَ الْبَحْرَيْنِ أَوْ أَمْضِيَ حُقُبًا. He says that he tells his lad, he tells his companion that I'm going to continue going on and I'm not going to rest until I reach the place where the two seas meet, even if it takes me years. Now this is interesting here. It intrigues us. It piques the curiosity. What is going on here? Where is Nabi Musa going to? Why does he say that he's going to go on for ages and ages, even if it takes him ages to get to where he wants to go to? He's going to go. Nabi Musa alayhi salam, after the story until we covered it, he became a very busy person, because then he received the revelation. Allah tasked him with a very important task. He went and he talked to Pharaoh, and eventually he showed him the miracles that Allah gave him. And he eventually led his people to deliverance. Pharaoh and his army were drowned in the sea. And then he had a whole community to guide and to establish. So many different events happen in his life. But now we see that he has separated and he's just going along with his traveling companion. And he's just walking. So what is it that he's walking? What is he trying to do? What we can see from this surah, and as we'll see in the verses upcoming here, is that Nabi Musa Islam is on a mission. Okay, and his mission is that he wants to meet with a special servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you look at the ahadith on this topic, associated with this verse, they tell us a little bit more about it. Even though we can get a lot from the Quran itself, the ahadith tell us more too. And I just want to share with you the hadith just to give you the context. What happened is that this incident actually takes place towards the end of Nabi Musa's life, after even his brother Harun had passed away. And he was training his successor, who was going to be Yusha ibn Nun. All the prophets would train their successor. They would never leave their community without a successor. That's something that doesn't make any logical sense. And so those who say, na'udhu billah, that the prophet, were to somehow leave the community without a successor, logically speaking, it doesn't make sense, and it's contrary to the life pattern of all the prophets who are tasked with leaving a successor. Now, Nabi Musa Islam is now towards the end of his life, and what happens is that this thought comes to him one day. And this thought, he says to himself, according to the hadith, Ma ara Allahu azza wa jalla khalaqa khalqan a'lamu minni. I do not think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created any creation who is more knowledgeable than I am. This thought just came to his mind, because he had reached the, maturity. All these great things had happened. He had received so much divine knowledge from God, which had helped him lead his community to deliverance. And then this thought came to him, maybe I'm the smartest person, maybe the most knowledgeable person. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala immediately tells Jibreel, the angel, he says, go to Musa and go meet him and tell him that adrik abdi qabla an yuhlak. Jibreel is told, go meet my servant Musa before he perishes, because this thought is something that could be something that causes somebody to perish. And tell him, he said that if you were to go to the place where the two seas meet, you'll find a man there who is a worshipper. So go and follow him and learn from him. Okay, so this is interesting here. Nabi Musa is being informed that, wait a minute, there is an opportunity for you to learn from somebody. Don't imagine that you have everything. Okay, there's an opportunity for you to learn something from somebody, and you can find him where the two seas meet. Now this is a pretty vague description here. Maybe this is a test for Nabi Musa alayhi salam. After he receives this piece of knowledge, what is he going to do? One reaction would be to say, okay, God, you didn't give me enough information there. Or I want an address so I can plug it into my GPS and then I can go. But Nabi Musa alayhi salam doesn't do that. No, he gets this piece of information where the two seas meet, and this is something for him to act upon. Another reaction might be that, oh, wait a minute, so there is somebody that God has given knowledge to, and I don't have that knowledge. Let me feel jealous about that. Let me start sulking and say, oh God, I thought I was your favorite servant. We had the special times. I'm a ulul azm prophet. You give me the staff. Why didn't you give me that knowledge too? Start complaining about it. Nabi Musa doesn't take that approach either. Nabi Musa is an elderly man by this time, my brothers and sisters, an elderly man. But despite that age, remember, he has that energy, right? He gets up, he gets his companion, his successor, and he says, okay, we're going. We're going on a mission, and even if it takes me ages, I'm going to find that servant. I'm going to take knowledge from him. So now we're seeing another characteristic of Nabi Musa alayhi salam. we're going to get another life lesson, which is that somebody who wants to enjoy success in this world and the hereafter, somebody who wants to take the Quranic spirit and act upon it, is somebody who is always keen on learning. This is one of the lessons that we get from Nabi Musa alayhi salam. Notice, he's at an old age. A lot of old people who reach a certain age, they stop learning. They stop feeling the need to learn. They said, okay, learning was for my younger years. But the example here is somebody who continues learning. You know the Prophet's saying, the famous saying, like, seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave. There was this one scientist named, I believe it's Fakhruddin Razi, famous Muslim scientist. They say that until his dying moment, he was somebody who took the spirit of that hadith about seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave, and he acted upon it. So one of his friends says that I went to see him, he was on his deathbed. I wanted to go and visit him, pray for him, console him and everything. And he sees me, like his eyes are still keen. He looks at me, he says that, okay, do you mind if I ask you a question? So, and he asks him a question about, because even at that time he wants to learn something. And then his friend says that, okay, well, I'm at his deathbed, but I answered him. And he said, thank you. And then as I left the house, I heard the cries of his family come. We realized that he had passed away. This is the spirit of Islamic learning. And also, you see here that Nabi Musa, despite having achieved so much perfection, he still saw himself as lacking. Right? There was no stopping point. He's always saying, okay, there's room for me to grow higher and higher and higher. That's an inspiration for us as well too. Because we can compare, look at ourselves and say, okay, where are we compared to Nabi Musa alayhi salam? There is no stopping point. Because perfection itself is unlimited. Infinity is infinity, right? Whatever we have is finite. So there's always room to go towards perfection. Please say salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Now they go along, they travel for some time. We don't know how long, but it seems that it was for some time. Finally they reach a place which is known as the intersection of the two seas. And there's some discussion about where exactly that is. That's fine, that's a separate discussion. Anyhow, they get there, and then Nabi Musa ﷺ hasn't been given the precise address. So they know that now they have to start looking. Okay, so after they get to that point, they go along, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says something. He says that when they got there, نَسِيَا حُوتَهُمَا فَاتَّخَذَ سَبِيلَهُ فِي الْبَحْرِ سَرْبًا. They had a fish with them. And that fish was going to be their lunch. But somehow this Yusha ibn Nun, his apprentice, he was in charge of taking care of the fish. Somehow the fish escapes from him. And it's some indication that perhaps it actually, when they reached that one point, the fish actually, it was dead before it became alive again, and it swam into the sea. And Musa a.s. didn't notice this, but the apprentice did notice it, but the apprentice forgot to tell Musa a.s. about it. So then they travel a little bit more, and they get to a rock, and they're feeling tired. So they go and they rest on the rock. And then Musa a.s. says that, he tells the apprentice, okay, آتِنا غَدَاءَنَا لَقَدْ لَقِينَا مِنْ سَفَرِنَا هَذَا نَصَبًا. Let's have some food. I'm tired. It's been a very long and wearisome journey. Let's enjoy the fish. So then he remembers. He says that actually, what happened is that when we were leaving that place to come to the rock, when we were leaving that place where the two seas meet, to come to the rock, I forgot about to tell you about this, but what happened is that the fish actually escaped me and it went off into the sea. So then Nabi Musa a.s. says something interesting. He says that, and this is in verse number 46, قَالَ ذَلِكَ مَا كُنَّا نَبْغِي. That's what we were looking for. Somehow Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had told him that that servant was at this one place, and that this was the sign. When this happens to you, this is when you know that you can find my servant at that place. Now, what exactly it was, whether he told him the full details of like the fish escaping into the sea, or just something general along those lines, we're not sure. But somehow this triggered something in Nabi Musa's mind, and he said, okay, we have to go back there. So they retrace their footsteps, and they go back to that place where the fish escaped, and there, فَوَجَدَ عَبْدًا مِنْ عِبَادِنَا آتَيْنَاهُ رَحْمَةً مِنْ عِنْدِنَا وَعَلَّمْنَاهُ مِنْ لَدُنَّا عِلْمًا. They find this servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, the description of this servant is quite amazing, because it doesn't say that, okay, they found a servant who was knowledgeable. They didn't say that they found somebody named Khidr or something like that. The description that used is extremely profound, and it gives us an idea of how great this servant was. فَوَجَدَ عَبْدًا مِنْ عِبَادِنَا. This servant of Allah, Allah is so proud of him that He says that he's one of my servants. Now that's quite an accomplishment for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to take possession over somebody and to say that. آتَيْنَاهُ رَحْمَةً مِنْ عِنْدِنَا. We gave him mercy from us. What kind of mercy? Unbounded mercy. وَعَلَّمْنَاهُ مِنْ لَدُنَّا عِلْمًا. And we gave him ilm. What kind of ilm? مِنْ لَدُنَّا. The type of knowledge that is with us. So this was an incredibly knowledgeable person. Now, I want to share with you a hadith that's narrated in many different incidents and different books of hadith regarding this. You know, we said that Nabi Musa had this thought in his mind that perhaps he was the most knowledgeable. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells him, go learn from this person right here. It doesn't say either in the Quran or in the riwayat necessarily that Nabi Khidr, because according to his name was Khidr, that Khidr was more knowledgeable than Musa alayhi salam. But rather, what's clear is that he had some knowledge that Musa alayhi salam didn't have. Now it's interesting, what happened is that at that time when they meet, according to tradition, there's a bird that comes down and it takes some water from the ocean. And then it flies up again and then it spits the water out. So Nabi Khidr says, the servant of Allah who described it, Nabi Khidr, he says, look at that bird here. You know what it's saying right now? Nabi Musa says no. It's saying that the knowledge of Musa in Khidr compared to the knowledge of Allah is like the amount of water that I just spit out of my beak compared to this ocean. Alright, so this is a lesson, my brothers and sisters. It's not about trying to see, okay, who's more knowledgeable than the other. It's just that these two servants of Allah who saw themselves as servants, how they were so keen on advancing their knowledge and taking advantage of this knowledge to advance themselves. This knowledge wasn't, by the way, about just gaining more facts. Nabi Musa wasn't just going to learn another language or to gain some more terminology about something. Rather, it's knowledge, mimma alimta, in the next verse, rushda. It's that knowledge which helps us develop as human beings. That's what he's looking for. Okay, now this is the story. We've gotten, the life lesson is the lesson of learning. Alright, now, brothers and sisters probably have heard majalis and lectures before about the importance of learning. Alright, I don't want to just repeat the same things that you've already heard before. But this is something that we need to talk about because it's something that is actually extremely important. How do we know that? It's because it's something that the Ahlul Bayt were very concerned about. I was just going through some of the ahadith about the importance of young people learning. Young people like yourselves learning. Not just learning, about learning gaining a deep knowledge in the religion. And it was outstanding for me. That it wasn't just one imam or two imams. Imam after imam would repeat the same line. Let me just give you an example. According to a hadith narrated from Imam Bakr alayhi salam, he says that if you were to bring a young person from my Shia in front of me, and that young person is not seeking deep knowledge of the religion, then I would have punished him in a painful sort of way. Okay, now that is a pretty strong statement. But that's not it. That's not it. In another statement from another imam, it says that if I were to find a young person from the young people, this is from Imam Musa al-Kadhim alayhi salam, if I were to find a youth from the youth of my Shia who is not seeking deep knowledge of the religion, I would have struck him 20 times with my whip. Okay, and so on and so forth, even more as well too. Now, what's going on here? Why is it the Imam alayhi salam, we think of our imams as being merciful people of love and kindness, the manifestation of all the perfect attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why are they saying this? Why are they speaking in such a harsh tone? Well, we can interpret this. Let's try to understand how to interpret it. We have to look at these hadith and say that, okay, me being a follower of the Imam alayhi salam, if I go to the Imam's presence and the Imam chooses to take out a whip and whip me, what would my response be? Is it that I'm mad at the Imam? Or I question the Imam and say, how can you be doing this? No. My response should be that if the Imam wants to whip me, then I deserve it. Right? Because I'm a Shia. That's what the meaning of Shia is, that I follow the Imam. Right? If he wants to whip me, then I deserve it. So these types of traditions are telling us about how important some things are for the Imams because they are important for us. right? If they weren't important for us, then the Imam wouldn't place so much emphasis on it. So we want to take this advice, the Imam, we want to act upon it, but sometimes there's barriers, there's things that hold us back. One of the big things that holds people back from learning and trying to study about the religion is that they think it's a bit of a drag. Right? They don't enjoy it too much. And there's other things which they consider to be a lot more pleasurable. And so people are much more keen on, for example, reading about the latest, fiction type of things, right? Because that's funner, than it is to read about, more serious books that tell us about things which are more relevant and point us towards God. Now, I want to quote a hadith, but before I do that, I want to just say one thing, that actually, in my experience, in both being a student and also in educating, I've seen that if Islam is presented in the right way, actually it's extremely enjoyable and very pleasurable. And everyone, even children, enjoy it very much. For example, for the last couple of years, we've had some summer camps in various parts of the country where we have intense instruction in Islam for ages, from like say 8 all the way up till college age. And for 5 days we're meeting and we're having like 5-6 classes a day of heavy Islamic learning. We're talking about like the nitty-gritty details, and we grill them too. But we find that inevitably the students who are there, they love it, right? They don't get tired, and they're the ones who are telling their parents, okay, let's go, we're going to get there on time. Why is it? Is it because we're incredible teachers? No. All right, we haven't taken any training classes or anything like that. It's just that the material that's there itself is attractive. Why is it attractive? Because we're created. We are created in a way that we actually like this stuff. We like hearing about these things. If we just try and focus and try it, actually we'll see that we actually enjoy learning about God, about the Ahlul Bayt, about the world that He created, about our role in this world. It's actually something which is very much enjoyable to us. Also, another thing that we need to understand is that when it comes to learning, if it's the case that we are in a position where we're trying to get somebody else to get interested in learning about Islam. Like let's say that you're a parent and you are trying to encourage your child to learn about Islam. The best way of doing that isn't to treat it like everything else. Like when we want our child to, like, for example, like let's say SATs are coming up. You guys know what SATs are, right? You have them, right? SATs? Yeah, okay, alright. SATs. So SATs are coming up. What do? You send your kid off to a class, right? Special academy, whatever, and you get them to study for the SATs. You can all you have to do as a parent is you drive them to the class, you pay the fees, and then they go and they study. Okay? When it comes to Islamic learning, that's not the spirit. The spirit of Islamic learning is that if you want to teach your kids, okay, or if you want to encourage somebody else to do it as well, you yourself have to be doing the same thing. All right? You have to be in that same type of mindset that I acknowledge that this is something which is really important to me. It's one of the life lessons, it's one of the keys to success, and I have to be doing it myself. I met a young person sometime back in another city, and I was extremely impressed by the depth of knowledge that he had, despite his young age. He was so advanced in his knowledge that we bumped him up from class 1 all the way up to class 2, where he was among college students, and even in class 2 he was the top student. So then I went to his father, I said, okay, what is it that you're doing that's different? Why is it that this child has such a deep understanding of Islam at such a young age? So he said that, I don't do that much, he said. But what I do is one thing, is that I talk to my children. Okay, and they know that whenever they have any question about Islam, they can come to me. And what I do is when they ask me a question, if I know the answer, I answer it. But if I don't know the answer, I never just drop it. I make sure to get them an answer. Okay, he has like context, he has his people in his phone, he knows whom to call. I get them the answer and then I always get back to them. That's it. But just by having a simple communication line open and then having a guaranteed response from my children, I've seen tremendous results. So this is the spirit that we need to have. Now sometimes people might be asking, they'll be wondering, okay, what is it that we can do? Where can we go to like learn things? That's a whole another discussion to be had about what exactly to do. Let me just throw out a few things there that maybe might be unknown to some of the people here. For children and also even for young adults as well too, there's a series of books that was recently published called God and His Stories. Six-part series. It was originally written in the Persian language and then was translated into English just recently. That series is very interesting because it talks about stories that teach us about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And these are great for us as individuals and also for talking with our children, teaching in the schools, as a way, because a lot of times when you hear stories, they don't take us back to the fundamental source, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the person who compiled these stories did a really good job in choosing those type of good stories. Another resource I'd like to share with you is this website called Call of Islam Radio, COI Radio. This is a full English language website that is broadcast from Qum. And the people who run it are very organized. They tap into some of the resources that are available in Qum, including some of the English-speaking students. And they talk about all different types of subjects, from Quran to beliefs to ahkam. And you can just tune in at any time and you can follow along. It's like a radio station that's available on the internet. I'm not saying that I'm supporting everything about this. I'm just giving you a suggestion of something which is useful. Similarly, another website which is useful is the website known as, it's called Shia TV, and they also have a number of interesting resources, especially in, I think, the Urdu language, but also in other languages as well too. And they also have a bit of a screening process as well too. They don't just have everybody and anybody who can talk well up on the website. Please say salawat ala Muhammad wa Muhammad. Okay, we're talking about learning, and there's only one thing left, but this is one important topic that we need to raise here, which is that, well, learning isn't just about learning about Islam, right? There's another aspect of learning which is learning about everything else that we learn about, our math and our science, our chemistry, our physics, or whatever else that we study in schools and then universities and colleges. What about all that? What is the Islamic perspective on all that? So when it comes to this type of knowledge as well too, the mistake that sometimes people make is that they separate it. They say that, okay, we have religious knowledge and then we have secular knowledge. But this actually isn't the perspective of a Muslim when it comes to knowledge. All knowledge is godly knowledge, if it's something that's worth acquiring. It's just that not everything needs to be learned by everyone at every time. And that's why we're told in many traditions, for example, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala is reported to have said, "Khairul ilmi ma nafa'a." The best of knowledge is that which is useful. Now, definitely the knowledge that we gain when it comes to the stuff we study in school is extremely useful. It helps us when it comes to understanding the world. It helps us when it comes to living life. And there's nothing wrong with living life. Islam wants believers to enjoy life. It wants us to take advantage of the world for the blessings that it has. That's part of being a Muslim. If there's somebody who doesn't have a good situation when it comes to the material status, right? They're suffering. They don't have a good home. They don't have enough money to keep the bills paid. Then how are they going to focus on other things which are important, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who creates all these blessings, He didn't just create them for other people. He created them for us as well too. And we should be the foremost in trying to do what we need to do in order to make sure we get those blessings. So that's why somebody who wishes to be a servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is somebody who actually takes his studies or her studies very seriously. It's something which is very important. Some people have this notion that no, like when I look at the people who are in the top, I see people who are non-Muslims, like maybe I see mostly like Hindus or I don't know, the Indians or the Chinese or something like that, right? So that means that we as Muslims somehow have to take a back seat. But this is not the right spirit. We should be the ones who are excelling in these things. We should be putting our utmost effort, as long as we're balanced and we're not, we talked about this in the past, that we have other duties as well too. We shouldn't encroach upon the other duties like our worship or other things. Also, our goal shouldn't be for the dunya, it should be for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we should be studying those things which are halal and useful. But when this is in place, we should be trying our best. We shouldn't be lazy about it. I met somebody who told me, a university student, he said that, I had an exam that I had to take. And that night, instead of spending the night studying, I made dua and I said, "Oh Allah, help me on this exam." And then I went to sleep. Okay. Now he said that, the next day I took this exam, and then my atheist, roommate or whatever, college mate, he took the exam. At the end of the day, guess what? He got a better grade than I did. So can you please tell me, Brother Salim, what's going on here? Why are my duas being accepted? Okay. Now, this is that might be an extreme case, but even in a lesser way, sometimes people they act in the same way. They're like, okay, no, I'm focusing on what I need to focus on. I don't need to worry about these things as well too. But actually that is a trick of the shaitan, my brothers and sisters. The place for dua and the place of tawakkul is alongside with acknowledging that this world works in a certain way. If we don't put in the necessary effort, we're not going to see the results. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala isn't out there to just make personal miracles for everyone. Rather, He makes this world work in a certain way, and we have to acknowledge this. So that's why Imam Ali says in a hadith, he says that he says, ihdar kull al-hidr. Be extremely wary of that the shaitan doesn't come and trick you. And paint, and this is interesting, and disguise laziness in the form of tawakkul. Right? Laziness in the form of tawakkul. I'm not going to worry about studying. I'm just going to pray to God to give me rizq and give me a good career, give me a good life. Allah's got me, and He's going to take care of me. That's laziness in the form, and then I'm not going to do what I need to do. That's laziness in the form of the shaitan. He's putting him tricks. The same thing applies to other things as well too. I'm just going to sit back and pray that I can find a good spouse and not do anything myself to set myself up for that, or to do the necessary research to find somebody. I'm just going to sit back. No, that's not going to wait. We have to make use of the means that God puts at our disposal. Brothers and sisters, finally, I just want to mention that those of us who now have children, right, a little bit older, we have great expectations of the younger generation. My expectation is that everyone here is trying their utmost, doing their taqdeer, doing their responsibility for the sake of God, in all aspects, whether it comes to studies, whether it comes to ibadah, whether it comes to learning about Islam. In every area, the expectation is that we should be putting our utmost. Somebody who just is okay with being the B student or the C student, is okay with the non-Muslims coming and taking those blessings that were actually meant for the mu'mineen away from them because of our own laziness, that's not acceptable. Okay? After all, we believe that the Imam of the time is going to come soon, inshallah. And we pray for his reappearance. At that point, who is he going to rely upon to make things, to run the affairs of the world? Is it going to be that he's going to look at everyone and magically give them the power that, okay, now you have this knowledge, now you go and do this thing, you go and do this thing? That's contrary to the way that the Imams and the Prophets have acted. They want us to use the means that God placed at our disposal to see what we can do and to achieve. And so therefore, those who have good education, those who have worked hard, these are the ones who the Imam is going to tap into to be among the close companions and among the other ones who will execute his divine mission, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hasten the appearance of Imam Islam. May He give us the motivation and the means to educate ourselves about our duties when it comes to God and when it comes to the world around us and when it comes to the other types of education that we need in order to have successful lives. Salawat ala Muhammad. Sure, Bismillah.
I have two short questions and one I think needs a little, I don't know, may also be short. Should I go ahead?
Bismillah.
Okay, thank you. The first short question is the book you mentioned, God and His Stories. Do you know who it is authored by?
God and His Story. I have a name in mind, Abtahi, but I might be mistaken. But it is something that you can get through Ansarian publications. Ansarian, yeah, they just started stocking right before I left for the summer, so in June. It's a new series that's out.
So it's not on Al-Islam.
It's not. No.
On the book, since you asked the question, is it stories about the Ahlul Bayt about God, or is it stories of the regular people, the believers?
Brother asked about in those stories, is it just stories about the Ahlul Bayt in Allah or stories about normal believers? It's all sorts of stories. Sometimes about the Prophet, sometimes about normal people, but a lot of them, in the Farsi version, he gives you the source, and a lot of them are from the books of ahadith that we have, like Birhal al-Anwar. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, in the English, they didn't give you the sources for where they got the stories from. I don't know why.
Okay,
Yes, but
question
yeah.
from the audience actually.
Yeah.
You heard the story from Musa alayhi salam?
Yes.
Right? I don't want to see if you remember the other name, and then there's another question for that. Who was the other guy, the other person? What was his name? The younger one. Who? Dr. alayhi salam? That's not what I meant.
The apprentice.
Prophet Musa's buddy, yeah.
The apprentice.
Musa's apprentice. What was his name? Yeah, what was his name that he mentioned? Very good. Yusha bin Nun. What's his biblical name? You may have a friend or two by that name.
So it just says Joshua.
Yeah, okay, great. Yeah, that's the one. Okay. And now the serious question for you, Maulana. As we all believe, alhamdulillah, as Muslims, as Shia, that the prophets are infallible or infallible, right? Now, what category would this thought of Prophet Musa fall in when he says that I don't think there's anybody more knowledgeable than me, or I think I'm the most knowledgeable, or...
Yeah.
So what category does this...
Brother says that, okay, this thought that came into, according to hadith, this thought that came into Nabi Musa alayhi salam's head that, I do not know of anybody more knowledgeable than me. Is that against the isma, the inerrancy of the prophets? Because we know that Nabi Musa is a prophet of God, he's inerrant. Okay. I want to mention here that there's another hadith which tells the story in a different way. That this one man comes to Nabi Musa and he says that, oh Musa, he starts praising, you're the one who did this. You conquered Pharaoh of the time. You led the people over the sea. You did all these things. You are the most knowledgeable person in the whole wide world. And then that's when the story continues from there. So this isn't the only version of the report. But even if we look at the thing, what does Musa say? He says, "Ma ara fi khalaqa Allahu khalqan a'lamu minni." I do not know of, or I do not see any creation of Allah who is more knowledgeable than me. He's stating a fact, right? He's not saying that I am, the most knowledgeable person, and na'udhu billah, taking pride in that or something. He's just saying this, and this thought crosses his mind. Now maybe this could be the means in a normal person of then, that could lead to the next thought and the next thought after that, right? But Nabi Musa Islam being the Ma'asum, that wouldn't be the case. Okay. Yes?
On the story of Nabi Musa and Nabi Khidr, are you going to go further into that, or you just mention it for the education?
Am I going to go further in the story of Nabi Khidr? Well, tomorrow we're going to talk about the first encounter, how he meets Nabi Khidr and how that shows his etiquette and decorum. Beyond that, I don't know, I'm not sure yet. I haven't decided. Why? Do you have a question about that, second part, or next part, or?
No, I would love to hear the story.
You'd like to hear about that story that happened that
the stages he goes through.
The stages he goes through? Okay. Until now, we've seen a number of those characteristics. We saw that how just in a few ayat, so many lessons we learned about Nabi Musa Islam and life lessons that we learned. For example, he was somebody who, in the face of difficulties, was always hopeful. He was somebody who, when hard times came up, he turned to God and he didn't lose hope. He was somebody who was always energetic. He was never lazy. He was somebody who was always looking to do more and more for the sake of God. He was somebody who held himself back from unnecessary mingling, but somebody who did his duty when appropriate. He was somebody who didn't seek rewards from other people, but he sought rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All these are lessons that we learn throughout the nights as we're going through the ayat. He was somebody who wanted to get married at a young age. And he was somebody who wanted to be in the company of a prophet. And he was somebody who didn't mind working, because working he saw as a means of getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All these were lessons that we learned from the story of Nabi Musa alayhi salam. Tonight we'd like to go to a different surah, Surah Al-Kahf, which is surah number 18, starting from verse number 60. And we'd like to see what Nabi Musa alayhi salam is doing in this surah, and see what other new characteristic, what other life lesson. Inshallah, we'd like to continue looking at the story of Nabi Musa alayhi salam in the Quran. And what we've seen until now is that Nabi Musa alayhi salam is somebody that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us is a special person. He's somebody who was blessed at a young age. He's somebody who was eventually chosen to be the Prophet of Allah. He was somebody that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows great love to, as He tells us about in the Quran. Just as an example of the love that Nabi Musa alayhi salam is shown in the Quran, at one point he is told to go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and go on a spiritual retreat for 30 days. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, out of love of Nabi Musa alayhi salam, extends this retreat for another 10 days. So instead of going for 30 days, he goes for 40 days. 40 days of engaging in whispered conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we read about his status, and we knowing that the Quran is a book of guidance, then we say, okay, what is it that Nabi Musa alayhi salam did in his life to be rewarded in such a great way while he was alive? What are those things that he did that Allah tells us about so that we can do those same things ourselves? We can learn about Nabi Musa alayhi salam that we can take and apply to our lives, inshallah. Nabi Musa alayhi salam, we're told, is walking. Okay, where is he walking to? What is he walking for? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem, verse number 60, وَإِذْ قَالَ مُوسَى لِفَتَاهُ. Please say salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. وإذ قال موسى لفتاه لا أبرح حتى أبلغ مجمع البحرين أو أمضي حقبا. He says that he tells his lad, he tells his companion that I'm going to continue going on and I'm not going to rest until I reach the place where the two seas meet, even if it takes me years. Now this is interesting here. It intrigues us. It piques the curiosity. What is going on here? Where is Nabi Musa going to? Why does he say that he's going to go on for ages and ages, even if it takes him ages to get to where he wants to go to? He's going to go. Nabi Musa alayhi salam, after the story until we covered it, he became a very busy person, because then he received the revelation. Allah tasked him with a very important task. He went and he talked to Fir'aun, and eventually he showed him the miracles that Allah gave him. And he eventually led his people to deliverance. Fir'aun and his army were drowned in the sea. And then he had a whole community to guide and to establish. So many different events happen in his life. But now we see that he has separated and he's just going along with his traveling companion. And he's just walking. So what is it that he's walking? What is he trying to do? What we can see from this surah, and as we'll see in the verses upcoming here, is that Nabi Musa Islam is on a mission. Okay, and his mission is that he wants to meet with a special servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we look at the ahadith on this topic, associated with this verse, they tell us a little bit more about it. Even though we can get a lot from the Quran itself, the ahadith tell us more too. And I just want to share with you the hadith just to give you the context. What happened is that this incident actually takes place towards the end of Nabi Musa's life, after even his brother Harun had passed away. And he was training his successor, who was going to be Yusha ibn Nun. All the prophets would train their successor. They would never leave their community without a successor. That's something that doesn't make any logical sense. And so those who say, na'udhu billah, that the prophet, were to somehow leave the community without a successor, logically speaking, it doesn't make sense, and it's contrary.
Of those pledges. Also, there's a couple of slots left over for sponsorship of iftar. Please come forward and do so. Sallallahu Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وبه نستعين. Thank you. إنه خير ناصر ومعين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وخاتم النبيين وسيد المرسلين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman, Salamun alaikum wa rahmatullahi.